to do this. Wouldn't this be a much more cohesive mechanism to be able to get, not just do the recovery, but the long-term rebuilding so that you're not duplicating efforts?
You know, ma'am, again, I would happily sit down with the committee and look at all the aspects of it. You know, I don't want to speak in terms of, you know, what one solution may be, because, you know, sometimes it's just not more people. It's a training aspect that's involved in that. It's other areas that are involved in that. Is FEMA a long-term agency? You know, I would make a case that we are a response agency and a short-term recovery
Well, that's not entirely what Congress has said that you're supposed to be when we changed the Stafford Act. For the U.S. Virgin Islands and for Puerto Rico, one of the things we said is that mitigation is necessary, and that we're doing your job better if we assist these areas to mitigate the damages so that when you come back in the next time, it's not just at the same level that you've had before. So we're looking at pre-positioning, right, for FEMA, because we know in the Virgin Islands, unfortunately, you know, every year we play a hurricane prayer. It's part of our culture because we know that that's going to happen. And so these are things that we need to put in place. Now, I'm not knocking HUD whatsoever. What I'm saying is that when we begin one process, end it, and then have to move to a different agency and begin again, then we have issues. For one of the things I wanted to bring up was you talked about capacity issues and cost estimates, right? Can you tell me how many cost estimates have been completed for the Virgin Islands and how many need to be completed for the fixed cost estimates that are, we have a March 20th, 2020 deadline? Do you know?
Ma'am, I'll get you the numbers. I know what we're focused on in the Virgin Islands. Oh, I'm sorry. Was it Chris or was you? Who?
No, I'm going to ask both of you. Okay. What's your thought?
You know, what we're focused on the fixed cost estimates are those that apply with the Bipartisan Budget Act. And the beauty of that is, as well, as you know, is it allows us not to look at the pre-existing disaster conditions of that infrastructure.
Right, but how many of those cost estimates?
I can get you those numbers back.
Mr. Curry, are you aware of how many have been done and how many are still needed to be done, or a percentage?
So what we reported in our testimony is that there were 2 alternative procedures, long-term infrastructure cost estimates completed so far in the Virgin Islands. That doesn't mean that there's only been 2 projects, but
I know.
Yeah.
And out of how many do you know that they've said they're going to be doing?
I don't think the universe is actually known. I haven't seen an estimate on that.
Okay, and the date is, we have the estimate are due by March 2020, right?
Right.
March 20th, 2020 is a deadline, which is a concern to me because we have issues in which FEMA resources on the ground are, one, unfamiliar with building technologies and construction processes in the Virgin Islands. There are changes in personnel that occur on a regular basis, and those individuals need to be brought back up to speed as to what the last individuals who were in the Virgin Islands need to do. I mean, I'm not insensitive to the challenges of FEMA with multiple disasters around the country, but I do, of course, have to be concerned with the Virgin Islands, where September 2017 was the hurricane. We lost a major hospital in the Virgin Islands on the island of St. Croix, the only hospital. We still do not have a mobile unit for that hospital. We have one operating room. It's just deplorable when we talk about what individuals have to live through in dealing with this process and the need to streamline it. And so that's why I'm asking you about these cost estimates. Do you know if FEMA will be willing to devote more resources and personnel to site visits and more expeditious completion of the work it deems necessary? I know that you have a lot on the ground, but I don't think that you're at full capacity yet, are you?
We are, you know, looking at how do we bring more local hires on board to help with that effort, because we know it's going to be a long-term effort. I understand where the deadline is, but I'm committed, we're committed to working with the territory to make sure that we get the fixed cost estimates done and the work moving. I think you hit on something, though. You know, we understand that we have to have generators on the island pre-storm. We've done that now. We've learned a lot since 2017 about what are those critical things that we need on the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico and all of our territories for that matter. Yes, ma'am. I will commit to that. I'll speak with Jackie who's running the operation.
She's been fantastic.
Yes, ma'am.
And the people that you have on the ground are really committed, and we're grateful for them being there. We just need more of them.
Yes, ma'am.
We need more people. And the other thing I wanted to mention just quickly, wanted to get a question and answer on, is duplication of benefits. So in the immediate aftermath of the hurricane, you have individuals that take out SBA loans, right? They need their homes repaired, they need it fixed, and so under the Disaster Recovery Reform Act, we know that governors have the ability to request a waiver of the Stafford Act prohibition regarding duplication of federal benefits. So that's the question I'm asking is that, are you in favor, and with the new provisions in federal law, so those who have taken out SBA loans right after a major disaster, some out of desperation, others in need to begin rebuilding right away. For most of us, the storms continued, hurricanes and rains continued for several months after that initial hurricane. Will they be able to use community development block grant funds they received to repay SBA loans? Will you allow our governors to be able to do that, request the waiver? Anyone?
Ma'am, I'm not familiar with the situation.
You're not familiar how individuals take SBA loans?
Oh, no, I am familiar with that, and actually, we have heard similar things. It's very confusing right after a disaster.
Right.
That they're actually getting a loan versus direct assistance.
Right.
I'm not familiar with how that would work under that scenario with CDBG HUD grants.
Mr. Baird, could you answer that quickly, and then we'll move on?
Thank you.
Ma'am, very similar to Chris, that would be a HUD, SBA a question, ma'am. I don't.
Maybe somebody can get us, we'll look into it and get it back for the record. Just, we've heard a lot about FEMA staffing. What about Economic Development Administration staffing? Do you have enough people out in the field helping folks to go through the applications and grant process?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, unquestionably, the implementation of nearly 3 times of our regular appropriation has put a strain on staffing and EDA, and we've worked hard to fill that gap, but have had challenges doing so. And I think those challenges have come on multiple fronts. One, with a very strong economy, we're competing with not just other federal agencies, but the private sector for the key positions that we need. Particularly credentialed positions related to civil engineers and environmental compliance specialists and others. So we've worked hard to get those folks on board, but in many cases, we've fallen victim to them going into the private sector. We've also encountered some friction in regards to just the traditional administrative processes. Sometimes it takes longer than we would hope to get people through the federal hiring process. I guess I would note in that regard that unlike some of our sister federal agencies involved in disaster response and recovery, EDA has no special authorities related to hiring and bringing on staff to help with disaster response. So we're working through the traditional process. At this time, we've brought on board approximately 50% of the temporary hires that we've identified that we'll need to deploy the disaster recovery assistance.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I think you can see some of the frustration of the members of this committee, and we're anxious to look at some reforms that we may do, streamlining the process, reorganizing possibly how to help with the personnel issues. So we ask you to continue to work with us as we move forward with some of these reforms. Are there any further questions from the
Madam Chairwoman, I
Ms. Miller?
strongly suggest that FEMA stay to hear the witnesses from the second panel. I think it would be very helpful.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. At this point, then, we'll say thank you and ask the second panel to come forward.